Hello.
Hello.
Good evening, all.
Evening.
There we go.
Hello.
Hello again.
What a different backdrop for you, Jesse.
I just, my wife moved me over like 6 feet. So I used to be in that corner and now I'm here. So same everything.
Okay, you're now recording and I'm hitting the go live button right now. So you can open the meeting how you'd like.
Okay. Yeah, it looks like we're live. So thanks everybody for coming. Welcome to Zoom. So this is the first of what we hope is a repeating series of board workshops. And this is scheduled from 6 to 7 p.m. Eastern, and then it's going to be followed immediately by a special board meeting, which we'll call to order at that point. So we do have a call to order for this. I don't think it's necessary, but just to make it formal. Everybody for coming. Welcome. I have an echo.
It was me. YouTube was.
Yep.
You
Cool.
were starting.
Okay.
We're all set.
Okay, cool. I'm really bad at hearing my own voice talk back to me. I know some people can just slide right through it. So yeah, so this will be the board workshop portion. So this is an informal call to order. We do not have an agenda. We will take no actions. We do have a scope, which is for an overview and a general discussion of the FY 2022 General Fund GSB budget. And we do have a hard stop at 7 p.m. Just to remind anybody, I know we have a few attendees here. We are streaming live. It's a public meeting. However, it's not a public forum. I tried to make it clear that this is really a workshop for the board to, since we have some new members, but also we just, we have budget season starting. We have a lot of policy work that we have planned. So this is really a time for us to discuss and brainstorm and learn with each other in public, in a public forum, in a public meeting, without having to actually do the business of the board. So just setting some sort of expectations around what the content of the meeting will be. And I believe that Craig and Lindsay have prepared some content for us. We can sort of drive through it and get to work.
Lindsay, are you able to share your screen?
Lindsay looks frozen.
Oh, that's unusual.
Yeah, it is. It usually does not happen.
You find her.
Maybe somebody's streaming WandaVision
There's
at her
open.
house or something.
Lindsay, are you there?
Yeah.
So I am now the host and Lindsay just disappeared.
Oh,
so
okay.
hopefully she can rejoin. Do we want to start with just talking about, Stephanie, if you're talking, you're muted. So do we want to just start by talking about the process as we had started before we went live? We could maybe recap on that.
It would be good to do that and to agree on dates so that we can plug all of those in.
Great.
I mean, I think that Stephanie and I were on the same page as far as getting up to March and sharing the draft budget it'll be March 10th with the draft budget coming for review by the Great Salt Bay CSD board. And then you're right, Stephanie, then I think we would have a budget meeting in between March and the April meeting for a budget hearing and then approve in April.
So,
okay.
Right. I don't know if it would be called a budget hearing, and I guess I was, thinking that this would be our budget meeting where even the public would be able to give input to say, we want solar panels on the roof. Those things come up at our budget vote meeting, and this is our first meeting, and hopefully we can always hear from the public in later meetings, but this would start us off to just let us know what our priorities are as a board. And, any changes or priorities that Kim had for the budget for this year.
Okay, well, Kim's not here tonight, and I have to be really candid to you, I hadn't prepared for that type of meeting.
Okay, well, let's just, let's go through the budget as a brief overview. Okay, let me just see.
Can you all see my screen now?
We can
Yes.
see it.
You're
Okay,
still very
so-
tinny.
It sounds. Start with this process.
Yeah, Lindsay, I think you need to kill your video again, as long as that doesn't stop screen sharing. You're running on limited bandwidth, it looks like.
That's what happened last time. Okay, I stopped my video. Can you still see my screen?
Yes, we
And
can.
much better
Mhm.
audio. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so you get to look at my nice picture instead. So this is what came out of one of the documents Craig and I had. Craig, it's from your office. That the process of the board meeting, and it sounds like this is a good place to start.
Mhm.
So we have the pre-GSB board meeting, which has already happened in February, where the principal, superintendent, and myself, and actually Kelly Stokes, the special ed director, also met to review the different cost centers and preliminary numbers. And then in February, the finance committee reviews the preliminary budget with the close to the same group, folks as needed, and adjustments can be made. We did, the finance committee, look through document. We've done step, second step as a preliminary piece. I don't think we're done with it yet, but we did open looking at it. In March, we should review if we did in April, the final from the March meeting, and then followed by April, the board fully approving the budget, and then May. Well, this has April and
And I think that
April
that's a
considering again
reflection
the
of what, I'm sorry, Lindsay, that's a reflection of what happened last year. We think that it was moved up to an approval in April with the GSB board meeting. I'm sorry, the GSB Community Consolidated School meeting to approve the budget in May, and then the referendum in June. We were a month off, I think, last year, Stephanie.
We were, because the towns, there'll be a ballot vote in June at the town meeting, the same day as the town meeting. And so they need like 6 weeks, or they need there's lead time to have that approved. So that means that it has to happen in May. The vote has to happen in May.
Yeah, and last year we were still negotiating with Bremen, Damascotta, and Newcastle. End of May, we were still not sure what was happening.
And town meetings didn't happen until July. That's why we
Right.
were able to push it off a month.
Okay.
So April, the board needs to approve a budget, and we'll get our draft budget to the board in March, and we may have to have that in between workshop again between March and April to talk about the budget, or it may be really simple and we don't have much to talk about. So.
Okay.
And if possible, we can pull the public budget hearing earlier into April, right? It could be toward the beginning of the month. That should give us enough time. I think it's important that that happens, whether the board approves a budget. I think what we want to avoid is iterating on approvals. So yeah, that makes sense. And then we have a special board meeting that says April 14th. So, and I guess if we have to slide this back and, and compress the schedule a little bit, we should be able to do that. I think it's important to understand what kind of lead time we need and really how public meetings are even happening. I'm not clear on that. I don't think we're any more clear this year than we were last year.
I agree with you. We're not any more clear.
I think that's the statement of the night.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So looking at the calendar this year, then finance reviewed it in February. A draft went out. Finance will look again on March 2nd,
Mhm.
and then we will review it as a board line by line on March 10th. And then on April 14th, the board will approve the budget. And in between March 10th and April 14th, we may have another meeting to update, to change, get public feedback on it. Okay, thank
Yeah,
you. That's,
I think we need to book that public budget hearing between those two dates.
okay, yeah.
Yep. Which
Thank-
is what's on this agenda here. So that, I think that works.
Yeah, I had pushed off to May, and I think that's what threw us off. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Could I ask a question? It's sort of detailed, but so if April 14th is the GSB board approval, and then the finance committee reviews it on April 6th, do we want to have that public meeting before April 6th so that the finance committee has a chance to kind of interpret and attend to those and then bring that to the board?
Josh, I've got a calendar in front of me, and I'd actually suggest that you do it the week before, maybe even Wednesday, the 31st,
Mhm.
Of March?
because Wednesdays seem to be your kind of natural meeting date. And that would give you input prior to the finance committee meeting to fine tune it on the 6th.
Mhm.
Okay. Yeah, I could see that. I mean, I think it could work either way because ultimately it's coming back to the board
Right.
to aggregate both sets of inputs and to make it work.
Just to
I
give us
guess
both-
if you move the hearing ahead of finance, then at least gives finance committee more. Yeah, that makes sense. That works. Good idea,
But we
Josh.
can always come back, but we'll tentatively talk about that. We could actually review that when we set an agenda next week for a regular meeting if you want.
That sounds good.
Okay.
Lindsay, your audio keeps breaking up. I wonder if you would consider maybe calling in on your phone. I don't know if that, like, you can call and just do audio and then you can mute out of Zoom, and then I don't know if that's a hassle.
I'm able to see share.
No, you stay logged in and screen share, but then also for your audio, you could use your phone. There should be a call in.
There should be. Let me stop.
Yeah, if it's a
sharing
hassle,
for a minute.
don't. Yeah, if it's a hassle, don't worry about it. Yeah, Sam just dropped the phone number in there, so you should be able to call in and have audio, and then you can mute Zoom on your computer, and you can screen share, and you can type in chat and everything, but your audio will come through the phone. It might be a little easier.
I certainly can try that.
I think you need to turn the sound off on your computer too, or else you'll
Yeah.
get a loop there.
Here you are. So now I moved you into the panelists, so you should be able to mute out your computer and just talk on your phone.
Okay, so I'm hearing myself through the phone and the computer.
Yep.
But I can do the feedback.
So you can mute.
Lindsay, I think if you just turn off the volume on your computer, that way you won't be hearing anything. Right now you're muted, so we're not going to hear you twice. But if you turn off the volume on your computer, you're not going to get that feedback because it won't be your phone won't be picking it up.
Okay, can you guys hear me all right?
Twice.
You need to keep muted on the computer. So muted on the computer, volume all the way down on the computer, run all
It keeps
audio through the
changing my
phone.
settings as I go.
Perfect.
That's better there.
Okay,
How does it sound for you? Is that good?
I can hear it through the phone, yes, and watch you on the screen. And now I'm going to
Perfect.
see if I can also share the screen.
You should be able to. Yep, you should be able to share screen, and that was a well spent 3 minutes, I think. Nice to
Look
have
at
you
the
back.
things we're learning. Okay, are you all seeing my screen?
Yes.
All right.
Indeed.
So I was asked to just make sure everybody understood how to read the budget report, which is always a handy thing to start with. So here on the screen right now, you can see that I actually had the date of the first finance committee at the top, but normally the date will reflect the most current date that we're talking about. Before I go into what the first page is, let me just explain the columns because this tends to help people a lot. The FY20 actual is not what was budgeted and adopted in FY20, it's what the actual expenses ended up being. However, when you're looking at this report, it's going to be a little bit off because for some items, a third of the year didn't happen. So for instance, I think when we were looking at transportation, bus maintenance was lower, if I remember correctly, because the buses weren't running as much and there were less maintenance bills during that time. Or nursing services was another one where we were billed for 2/3 of the year instead of 1/3. So the actual cost normally in this line would be what we had spent in FY20, but it is skewed in many categories right now. FY21, the year we're in right now, is the adopted budget, not what we're currently spending. It's the adopted budget. Because we're in the year, I can't put what we've spent because it wouldn't give you an accurate projection of what the year would cost. So you have 2 years that are screwy on this as reference points. Normally you wouldn't. FY20 would normally be a bit more accurate. But keep that in mind when you're going through things. Budget total is obviously what we're proposing for FY22. And then we give you the difference between FY21 adopted and FY22 proposed, both in dollar amounts and percent. And as you would expect, negatives are in parentheses. Any questions on that? Great. Okay. So the revenues, this is built, we get a document called the ED 279 from the state, and that has a whole bunch of convoluted formulas for the state, and they figure out what they think we should be spending. And then based on more formulas, what share they will give to you and what share each of your member towns should pay. So the state subsidy, line 12, is the amount that the state says they will give you towards FY22 budget. The numbers up here on 1, 3, and 5 are what the state says is the required share for Bremen, Damascotta, and Newcastle. So those are the amounts the state says you need to put in at least this much in order for us to give you our amount in a matching cost sort of scenario. I have filled in tuition, regular elementary, based on Kim's anticipated number of tuition students. Tuition's calculated by the state on a per student rate. So that is expected revenues for tuition students that will be continuing at GSB. I have put $1 in here for additional local for Bremen, Newcastle, and Damascotta. Once we have a completed proposed budget and we have a fund balance forward or any other revenue that we know about, the remaining amount of the budget is divided with the cost sharing formula into this category. So I haven't filled it in yet because we don't have a confirmed budget and we haven't made a decision on fund balance forward. But I put $1 so it grabbed your attention in that spot.
And Lindsay, if I may, each of those will be decided by the local school committees, right? The Damascotta, Newcastle, and Bremen?
They're approved. Well, no, the three other committees do the secondary budgets.
Right, okay, thank you.
This comes through the GSB process. So.
Okay, right, thanks.
Revenues are listed as negatives because we expect to get them, but we haven't received them yet. When we do get them, they get put in as a positive. It's a slightly backwards way of thinking, but it does make sense in this world. Now, I'm not going to go through line by line. That's for later meetings, but I will just give you an update on what each cost center is, or what we call articles. And I will tell you these budgets are done in positive numbers. They're not negatives because this is what we expect to spend. And when we do spend it, it goes in as a negative and reduces the amount. So regular instruction, this first section is anything to do with general ed instruction. And that becomes a lot more clearer when you see what's pulled out into other articles. But any regular ed teacher, so not special ed teacher, but any PE, health, music, all of those, they're all regular ed teachers are in here. Benefits, health insurance, retirement amounts. Instructional supplies is in here. That would be down in this area, instructional supplies, textbooks, dues and fees, gifted and talented, purchase services. So if you were contracting with somebody for a educational presentation, it could be in there if it was a regular ed thing, not a supplement. So this is all of your general ed expenses, and this is the bulk of the budget. It didn't print out well here because it's at the bottom of page 1, but I can show you how the totals are done when we get to a section that fits on one page better. The next article is special ed instruction. So anything that is an associated cost for special ed. So special ed salaries for teachers and ed techs, benefits, retirement, health insurance, their tuition for the staff, any conferences and workshops they have, and supplies for special ed departments as well go through here. Your cost share of central office special ed administration department shows up in this as well. So your Grace Bay portion of the central office special ed office is in here. Social workers are considered by the state of Maine for accounting purposes as special ed, regardless of any student that they may serve or assist. They are accounted for in special ed. We also have in here things like speech, OT, occupational therapy, physical therapy, psychological services, which are testing services, and ESY is extended school year, which is summer school for services, students that are determined to need the extended year of services. And then it does have, of course, you can see a little bit better here, the totals and the percentage that the article is increasing or decreasing. Any questions so far? Jump in and interrupt me if you do. Otherwise, I'm just going to keep talking like I do. Okay. Other instruction are your co-curricular and extracurricular. So sports, clubs after school, anything that happens outside of the school day is extracurricular. Co-curricular are things like field trips or special presentations. You do have in here some professional services, like if you had a traveling artist or a book, study author come in, that would be through this other instruction section. And we do separate out transportation, regular transportation from field trips and sports. That field trips and sports transportation is in other instruction. Student and staff support is exactly what it sounds like, all of the different pieces that are there to make sure that the school can keep running well. So you have your guidance counselor, which is different than social worker, and that's a topic probably for another meeting if we want to get into that at some point. Nursing is here, leadership team, staff development, so staff going to workshops or having meetings to work on structural changes for the school. Library is in here, tech integration is in here. So the things that are not direct instruction, but all help support direct instruction are in here. You also have your assessment for your curriculum administration, which is a central office cost share portion, again, for the office that Ann Hassett currently serves in, that works as the Director of Curriculum Instruction and Assessment. So that is another cost share of the central office budget. Instructional online subscriptions are in here, testing materials, all those fun things. System administration is the up in the clouds administration. That's the school board and central office in terms of superintendent's office and assistant superintendent's office. So these are not the direct day-to-day in the school, but the other costs associated with running it. The assessment ones here are your cost share services for central office, and the rest are related to advertising, insurance, audit. If you need to consult with the lawyers, et cetera, all come in under system administration.
Okay, Lindsay, I'm going to slow you down and stop for you just for a second. And if you go to lines 162 and 163, those are related, those relate back to the AOS 93 budget. And this is the assessment for GSB from the AOS budget based on the interlocal agreement.
Correct. This is the K-8 assessment for these three towns.
Yes.
The 912 portion is in those 912 budgets. So this is the K-8 assessment. I did work hard to make sure no one was double charged on those as I worked through those formulas this year. School administration is running the school day to day in the school. So you have your principal, your assistant principal, your office staff, the office copier, office supplies, which are different than instructional supplies for accounting purposes, your software portion for PowerSchool and InfoSnap to run the school. And you will see some of the things, for instance, if I can just point this out, are down that are shared costs. And that's because when we do the cost sharing formula, it's based on percentages of students, and grade self-based numbers went down a little. Some other schools went up, so your share went down a little. So you have a little bit of less cost in a few areas there. But when we do the line by line, we'll go through that more. Next is transportation. You run your own fleet. So in other schools that don't, this is one line that says contracted transportation, but here it's salaries, benefits, bus maintenance, bus fuel, tires, a transfer to a bus reserve should you choose to do that. If you require a monitor on the bus for special ed purposes due to an IEP, that comes in through a transportation section. So this line for you and Jefferson is a little bit more detailed and usually works out being a little bit more cost efficient to run your own when you've got the number of buses you have. Facilities and maintenance is pretty self-explanatory. You've got your custodian staff, you have your insurance, your ground services, your water and sewer lines, your cleaning supplies, all of the different things that relate to keeping the building up to par and running well and looking great are all in this line or this article, including if they wanted to go to any training workshops, travel, et cetera, that all is broken down in here as well. And then you have your food service subsidy. Food service programs across the country run in the red, of course. We never quite get reimbursed or don't end up charging exactly what it costs to run the program for salary, supplies, et cetera. So we do have to, by law, rectify that account at the end of each year. So each school builds in a subsidy amount that's based off, historical amount of what they end up paying in. So you plan an amount here to offset the losses of that program automatically, just so that you can make sure it has a zero balance at the end of the year. Should, with the pandemic, the changes that are happening, that not happen this year, that you may see that line going away in the future, but for now it still exists while they're working out the universal free lunches. And then at the bottom, you have nice big grand totals and percent changes and dollar changes. And that's the bottom line everybody is always looking at, is did the budget go up or down and by how much? And so just like when Fred Brewer does his audit, if you flip to the last page first, that's where the good information is. And that's how you read a budget.
Thank you, Lindsay. That was really great. I think hopefully that's enough for everybody to at least get started. I know a lot of us are seasoned at this, but others are brand new to it. So honestly, everybody feel free to ask questions. At some point, it's everybody's first time looking at one of these, and it can be a little daunting. But thank you, Lindsay.
You're welcome. And I'm going to stay on with my phone as the audio.
That's
just
working.
because it
That was a
seems to
good
be working
idea.
better. Okay.
Mhm. So does anybody have any questions having gone through that? Or was Lindsay so good that we are just professionals now? I wouldn't doubt it.
Can I put Lindsay
When
on the
you go-
spot? Just, Lindsay, can I put you on the spot, just see if it's all right? Would
course.
you, Lindsay, please link the secondary budgets to Bremen, Damascotta, and Newcastle? Because that is another piece that's kind of behind the scenes. These are our K-8 kids, but then we have our 9-12 that have separate budgets. We've met with Bremen on Monday. We're meeting with Newcastle tomorrow. We need to schedule Damascotta, but those are 3 additional budgets that also come into play here.
Yes, so the cost sharing formula has things broken down by town. It has multiple formulas, actually. It breaks it down by town, then it breaks it down by K-8, then by 9-12 as well, so that I can, for instance, with Noblesboro, their budget has the 9-12 built into this budget as well, because they are the one committee, one town running their entire school department. So they have within these articles, there are lines that have different codes that indicate secondary. So for Newcastle, Bremen, and Damascotta, you don't. I build separate budgets that have much, much smaller content, and they get presented to those individual committees. And the numbers that come out of this, the additional local and the required local shares from Great Salt Bay, get added to the overall picture for those 3 towns. So they end up with 2 budgets to consider and have the town approve and accept as their share for K-12 education.
Thank you.
When we do the meeting, the full meeting, we'll go through line by line. I will take up more time and explain exactly what each line means and the codes and the acronyms that are in everywhere as well.
I was just gonna say that's, if anybody's watching this later, or for folks that are attending right now, this is not the review. This is just talking about the process. We will get there, and at that point, we'll go through line by line. I would advise everybody on the board to take a look at it now or soon. And, if there's anything that makes your eyebrow raise or you have questions about it, just red pen it, bring it to our next meeting. As we go through line by line, that's the time to call things out, ask questions. Also, as Stephanie had indicated, it's a time to start voicing, priorities and things that you want to see happen. Whether we, want to think about more solar energy or wind energy, or if we want to look at computing equipment, or if we want to, whatever it is, that's the time, because we'll start refining pretty much right away, right, Stephanie and Craig? We get into this meeting and we're going to start driving toward an actionable budget pretty much immediately. So the sooner you can bring questions, concerns, and ideas, the better off we'll be, in my opinion. I don't know if anybody has anything to add.
If I can just jump in, I will send all of the committee members this FY22 proposed budget, because we did make some changes yesterday, minor changes to some supply lines. So just to make sure that you have the absolute most up-to-date numbers, I will send that out directly to each of you. We'll put it in a shared drive as well, but I'll get it to you directly in an email.
Great, thank you. Just had some noise. I have like noise cancellation. I don't know how much you guys can hear, but so does anybody have any questions about the process, what we've heard tonight, not getting into line items, not getting into specifics? Okay, and the timeline that we talked about before, that sounds right to me. Does anybody have any late breaking thoughts on that? This sounds good, because I think we can just go off, Craig, and kind of put together a calendar and obviously bring that to the next board meeting and
Thank you.
make
Yeah,
sure
that's a good
everybody's good
idea.
with it.
Okay.
Great.
I have a general question, and that is, you know, how many students are we actually, will we have a number of students that we're actually going to be, that this budget reflects? We're down quite a bit this year. Do we know when, I guess, when will we know what our expected numbers are going to be for next year and how that will impact the budget? So, I mean, that's probably not answerable right now, but that's an important question.
The timeline should be answerable. Like when is intake, kindergarten screening, all of that happen?
And that's exactly right, Jesse. We need Kim to talk about kindergarten screening, how many kids we're anticipating who are out there, the class sizes moving from fourth to fifth. Does that go from 2 classes to 3 classes? Does it go from 3 to 2? Then we're looking at our outgoing 8th graders and the 7th graders filling in. So we're looking at definitely those projections.
Mhm.
And that's Stephanie, that's a great actually question back to you. Historically, do we have that information in time for, yeah,
We
we
do.
would, right? Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, that has been my experience elsewhere too. So I
Right.
guess another question.
I guess my question was also because we're down so many students. And so if we're what's our confidence of either getting, back to our normal level, or are we going to still be in the 300s, which we've never been? So that
I
would
don't
be
think we
interesting.
know yet.
I think that should affect the budget.
We need to know those numbers as soon as
Yeah.
we can, obviously. And I mean, the thing is I'm sure everybody's aware of like, how is this fly off the market right now? I mean, there's a lot of people coming here. It would be very interesting to know, how many of those people are coming from areas where they have students, but they're finishing out maybe their virtual programs from their last school and they're planning on coming to GSB in the fall. Like we need to know that stuff for sure.
Mhm.
Or if not, and we're not looking to grow. And I think the budget right now reflects, sort of the current numbers,
Mhm.
as a status quo.
And one of the things that is always good for us to talk about is, excuse me, as we talk about staffing, not talking so much about students per se, but classes and FTEs in terms of
Classes, right.
full-time equivalents for teachers, full-time equivalents for specialists, full-time for ed techs, and that plays directly from Stephanie's questions in terms of numbers.
And that's where, we're always watching the class sizes, not so much the total student count, but the class sizes are really important, especially in those transitions. Craig alluded to that. 5th grade is important. Kindergarten incoming is important, because of that. You even in status quo, you have what I like to call fat grades, right? So some grades there's just more kids, and so you might have 62 in one and 45 in another, and you say, well, that's a whole other class, right? Possibly. Or maybe my math wasn't quite right, but you see my point. So where you think, well, we can now deal with one less in this grade level, and we need another, and can we loop students? I mean, there's a lot of things to think about there. Just managing a K through 8, or just a sort of I would imagine the larger schools have to deal with this, but it just sort of comes out in the wash. This is a big school for the area, but not a big school by national standards. So definitely is good to have that information in hand as we start looking at the budget.
Absolutely.
I think
Earlier,
those-
sooner than better.
Those projections will help the other towns as well. I know we had to cut off the ability to take tuition students in the past, and I'm just looking at the principal's report, and 7th grade right now, the total, including virtual students, was at 52, and 8th grade was at 57. 6th grade was at 47. So if all those progress, without changes, that's a net loss of 10, down from an additional amount that I think we had 66 8th graders last year. So that's like another 10. So, kind of telegraphing the accuracy of how open we are to tuitioning will also play into this. So sooner is better as we can get clarity on it.
Yeah.
And I just think sometimes, like, we know we won't have perfect clarity, but getting some more clarity will help.
I think going into this and preparing to look at real numbers, the other thing that I've seen in the past be a hang up is getting the numbers for insurance. So every year the insurance rates have the option of changing. Sometimes they change by a couple of points. Sometimes it can be a lot. So knowing what the new rates are would be really great, just so we know kind of what we're dealing with. I think.
And I think in the past few years, the change has been very low.
Mhm.
And
That's what I'm concerned with.
doesn't mean we should expect that in the future.
Because that's certainly, I mean, at least speaking for myself as a board member, that's where I want the money, most of the money going, is to salaries and benefits for the staff that make the school what it is. So we need to make sure that we can cover that, whatever that is going to be. So yeah, that
Traditionally,
would be
we-
another number to know.
Yeah, we usually get that midway through our budget process. So before we make a decision,
Right.
but maybe just like maybe April 1st, we'll find out.
I got an email that said they know, while people know that schools are starting to build their budgets, here's some placeholder numbers and you'll probably know something definite in May. And I burst out laughing, thinking, who hasn't already started building that? May is kind of late, but I did use the accurate placeholders that they said I had already built in before they even sent that. So that was good. It was not to exceed placeholders.
Thank you. And that's, I mean, but just there's all sorts of experiences around that. We saw I've seen a 9% increase in the middle of May, which is like unheard of and really late. So just want to make sure that we're padded against that and we know what we're dealing with, because that's the one of the most important things that we are providing oversight on. So this was great. Any other questions? Anybody
just
else
to
have
be
anything else
clear,
to bring up?
This is not the time to talk about things we would like to add in or change. This is just sort of getting everybody on the same page. Is that right?
Generally speaking, I think so, but I mean, it's just a workshop. If you have an idea for us to all think about, we could think about it.
Right. I might. I'm still forming.
Oh, okay.
was
Yeah, I
trying
just,
to-
for clarity, there's really no structure here. Obviously it's a public meeting. We're being professional, but we don't have business. So just keep in mind, we're not going to be able to express intent. We're certainly not going to vote on anything, but if you have ideas, this is definitely the time to bring them up and things to think about for sure. I would imagine in a business meeting where we're reviewing line item by line item, we're going to have a very generic action and we'll just have a very open-ended discussion. So that's a fine place to bring that up too. So don't think that we're going to miss an opportunity by not bringing it up here.
Jesse, if I may, I think, just talking about this more broadly, because we are delving into it kind of we're a new board and a new group, but when you talk about it, I mean, Josh, you're talking about, are there things that, we may want to add? We're talking about staffing, we're talking about students. We're also having to consider town affordability. When you looked at bottom line tonight, that increase is really realistic. It's 1.75 or something like that. I mean, we've seen them up to 15% based on secondary students at some of the other towns, and that kind of gets grim. But we do look at trying to balance need with balance town resources, the economic indicators. You've got a contract that's being negotiated or two contracts that are being negotiated. It's all of those things playing into it. And then when you do, and I think Lindsay alluded to it, when you go through and you vote on the budget, you vote the whole budget, but you also vote it line by line. I'm sorry, not line by line, but cost center by cost center, just to validate for the public that you have considered the different components of the budget. You forget how complicated it is until you start to take it apart and put it back together.
Well, if we don't have more content or more discussion, I think we can probably break. We do have our special meeting at 7. Anybody have any other ideas, or does that sound like a good idea?
Jesse, you could go directly into executive session since you're all here, right? Start early.
We could, I think we should wait till the posted time,
Okay,
probably,
all right.
but then we could also just take a break and come back. Is it the same Zoom link? I think it is.
It is the same Zoom link.
Okay, so
So I'll just turn off my camera and be back at 7.
That's what I was thinking. If there's no objections,
Okay.
let's just do that. Take a break, get a breather, and come back at 7.
Sounds good. Okay, thank
Good
you.
deal. Lindsay, thank you again. That was a really great walkthrough. Thanks.